So then Tungku sent me another poem. And he said, analyze this. It's called A Poet Reading. If you have it, you your handout, and you follow along as he reads it.
A poet reading. One. She is sunlight, standing by the pool, in a garden laced with flowers and songs, as we walk into our circle. Enshrined within a tactile moment, with no beginning, with no end. A brow lifted gently by rising lotuses, seeds the skies in reverence. As the eyes walk with seven golden coils, swim serenely into provinces of silence. Then, on the left side, where the heart resides, a hand gets reluctant. As if compelled by lingering strands of bitter ancient winds, now sadly come together, taking her in ways that only harsh things can. There is always darkness in her. After which she is again sunlight, waiting. She is someone we all know, especially those whose names are written in water, who scour big and small infinities, who are at times blessed by paths that resolve the failure of their lives. When pilgriming, we find the star's immaculate art that returns us to this village, Trisagion. Then lexicon and grammar and naming star, bringing metaphor, metonymy, synopsis, plus assorted relatives to achieve a figure. That is never done. For our words don't take in all. Omniscience shatters into lamentations and imaginations. The perfect poem is future tense. Meanwhile, neat feature must suffice. Life goes on. Meditate on words for more than time. Arrive to this surge, this minute, and the next, curving towards us to reveal poem on poem for you. Question. Is there difference if you've heard this one before or seven other people read the same poem? If ever it's the same? Which do you, he, she, and I hear or what? We anticipate having written a little ourselves. Some just wait, expectorant, but undecided, contemplating means to conjugate verbal icons. Others crowd beneath the great authority, namely, only use dipped in sound to set against its back. All from tough shards of ancestral history, especially post-colonial midnight happenings, marked by the magic compound of afterbirth. Perhaps that nascent celebration in our heads, waiting for release, or buried because love, singing, dying, or a special CD, loading a line from Keats, knowing a drop of dew, is that. Then, semi-finally, that satisfactory equation, briefly great, formed as all-purpose burns into cool radiance, that soars up the throat of language. She commands simple sound and image, open and shut. Another poem does its work and then dissolves into earth, water, fire, and form. Impatient, the quiet starts to rustle and undo as rhyming fingers manage artifice and mood. Once more, she is sunlight by the moon. Once more. Recalled, revised, recaptured for this gallery, she quivers, takes a space in several memories, is transmuted into many existences. As we listen to the one who becomes the light. Glass all empties, awaits another coming. But she never leaves. our soul certainty. See her as you will, as you can, as you travel, or sit still.
On the poem itself, at the end, excuse me, he lists a number of dates. And that's very purposeful. Because the point of what he's basically saying is that a poem becomes more satisfactory to the poet with revision. The urge to revise is always there. It is a creative itch. In other words, this crafting of the poem, it really, that line, perfect poem, is future tense. It never exists. Continuing revisions contribute to a sense of what the poet also calls neat incompletion. So there is this sort of motif throughout the poem of sort of perpetual ongoing activity. Now, how do you get that across grammatically? ING verbs, stand, taking, waiting, pilgriming, trysting, bringing, throughout the poem. But what is an ing verb? It's continuous, right? And so that is one idea throughout the poem, that it's an ongoing activity. It's never completed. Grammatically, he reinforces it this way. It's again the same idea. Mobilizing the habitual patterns of grammatical choice, taking the ing verb, meaning its continuity, and turning it into a non-habitual consistency, using it so often that it becomes the pattern. But then there's another thing that is repeated here, and that is the conjunction as. What does the conjunction as mean? It means it's simultaneous, at the same time. And so we have, as we walk into ourselves, as her eyes watch seven golden koi, as she commands, as it makes you, as rhyming fingers, as we listen, as you will, as you can, as you travel. Ongoing things, several at a time, simultaneously. This idea of incompleteness, well, that is articulated quite explicitly. He says, that is never done, for our words don't take in all. Perfect poem is future tense. Neat incompletion must suffice. Life goes on. Now, against this, what else do you notice about the poem? Pronouns. When you use a pronoun, it means that you mention who you're talking about, right? It's supposed to be referenced. But when we look at this poem, we see that there are three poems that are used. Well, we is pretty obvious. We is he's talking poet and us. You. Again, he's addressing you, the reader. But then there is this she. So don't you ask, who is she? She is sunlight. She is again sunlight. She is sunlight. Something you notice about this, and that is that whenever she is used as the grammatical subject, the tense is always, the finite verb is always simple present. When you use the simple present tense, what does it mean? It means it is timeless. There is no beginning, there is no end. It is. But then this whole idea of timelessness, again, we've had ongoing activity, simultaneity, incompleteness, and finally timelessness. There is no beginning, no end. There's always darkness to Eli. There is no end to the craft that makes the art. It is never done. A cup always slips. Semi-finally, so it's not even finally. She never leaves. Timeless. You remember I mentioned this before to you. This is from that emeritus professor of psychiatry, Russell Mears. He wrote in his book, Poet's Voice, the words of a poem are used in a symbolic way. They have more than a single meaning. The effect of a few simple words combined in a particular way is to evoke a sense of reality that none of them possess alone. The nature of this reality is not precise, it is indefinite. And then there is this line. Another poet does its double work. And that dissolves into earth, water, fire, air. What is the double work? What did Hassan talk about? A second order semiosis. Another poem does its double work and then dissolves into earth, water, fire, air. What are these? These are the elements, right? The 4 elements. When we looked at a Gaussian die, what would you say was the number? 2. Lots of things in pairs. When we looked at David, things, trees. And what is it here? 4. Numbers are part of the whole idea. It's in 4 parts. There are the 4 elements: fire, water, air, earth. Edwin Tumble likes the poet T.S. Eliot. You know who is T.S. Eliot? He wrote Cats. Okay, but he's famous for much more serious literature as well. T.S. Eliot wrote 4 poems, and they were called the 4 quartets. Now, each of the poems that are part of the 4 quartets really represent one of those elements: fire, water, air, earth. This gave me an idea. Talmud has 4 sections. Is he doing the same thing as T.S. Eliot? Let's pursue this. She is sunlight. Think about the association of sunlight. What is the association of sunlight? Sunlight, fire. Other associations with this element of fire is a spiraling energy. And this is represented usually by one of the solids. This goes back to Plato. Plato talked about 4 solids. I talked about more than that. We call them the Platonic solids. 4 are relevant here. Fire is associated with the Platonic solid, the tetrahedron. Okay, let's follow this up. I'm going to take the first stanza. How many sentences are there in the first stanza? There are 4. How many sides does a tetrahedron have? 4. But you know, there's other associations here. Sunlight is fire, pool is water, garden is earth, songs, air. These are sort of standard associations of words with the elements. So what I did was I went through this first stanza, and I noticed that we seem to have 3 paths: fire, water, earth, air. And again, the associations give us earth, air, fire, water, and finally, water, air, earth, fire. These aren't by associations, they are associations. If you look it up, you'll see that these are sort of the common associations with these elements. Now, you're beginning to think this looks a bit weird, right? This seems to be strange here. What's he doing? And where am I going with this? Well, let's see. Fire, water, earth, air. Earth, air, fire, water. Water, air, earth, fire. What did he create? It's the tetrahedron. Again, it's that visual that there's a certain visual quality about his poetry. Don't you feel sort of intrigued by this? That what you read is a poem and can look at it being so sort of on the surface when you read it, it looks so sort of, yeah, a nice poem about poems. Eloquent, you could say. But to realize that there is behind it a special craft, a special design, that is quite, to me, that is really quite special. Because I see in this more than what I told you, I think, last week, I didn't like poetry. I never found it that interesting. I really sort of skipped that part of my education, all right? I went for language, not literature. Well, this really taught me a lesson. And what I'm beginning to see as I look at this poetry is that there is something going on beneath the surface that is telling us something. Now, let's continue. Okay, so we have the Platonic solids, so they correspond to the elements, okay? Notice something else. Stanza 1, 4 sentences. The four-faced tetrahedron. Stanza 3, 8 sentences. The 8-faced octahedron, air. Stanza 4, 6 sentences. The 6-faced cube, earth. But there's one exception. But isn't that the whole idea? He breaks it. He creates this something that is repeated. The perfect poem is future tense. It has a flaw. It has a purposeful flaw. So if we take these four and the first fire, water, air, earth, there is something else here. This pattern, fire, water, air, earth, it was also, that's why T.S. Eliot wrote the 4 poems in this order. There is a meaning to the order. And the order is what's called the tetragrammaton. And a tetragrammaton is a formula that corresponds to the 4 elements in this order and 4 letters. What are the 4 letters? Yahweh. God. In a way, what he is spelling out here is God. He is spelling out, now, it is the I am who I am. It is the process. It is the process of creation itself. This is what the poem represents. It is about creation. Who is she? The poet invites us in this poem to walk into ourselves. What does it mean to walk into yourself? It means to discover yourself. By doing that, we come to terms with the reality of who I am by understanding who she is. Our reading of the poem, our reading of who she is, like our reading of the poem, it's never complete. That's why the poem is called a poet reading, not a poet writing. It is because the reading of the poem is never done. You remember one of the lines was a question. And the question was, well, let's see, what was the question? In the third section. I want to quote it correctly. Question. Is there a difference if you heard this one before? Or 7 other people read the same poem? If ever it's the same, which do you, he and she and I, hear or want? You read the poem. What do you get out of it? What does it mean? What does it mean? It's what it means to you. And that's why the poem at the end says this. It is a metaphor within a metaphor. You remember this from Inception, the movie? It just keeps going. See her as you will, as you can, as you travel, or sit still. As you can. What are you going to get out of this poem? That's what you discover out of it. See her as you will. As you can. Do you know about those associations? Well, I didn't until I started looking it up. As you travel or sit still. In other words, what you get out of the poem will reveal something about you. What you read into it, what you read out of it, I should say, reveals what you know, what you will, what you want. Poet's technique is what releases the poem into a form of immortality. If it's always going on, and if it's always meaning something more to the one who reads it, when I left Singapore, because I taught in National University of Singapore, that's how I knew Edwin before. I think I told you this before, right? And when I left, because I was teaching a course on sociolinguistics, a large lecture with about 200 students. And so it was my last lecture at NUS in Singapore. We were leaving, coming to Hong Kong. And so I asked Edwin if he would come to the class and if he would read one of his poems. It's called Language is Power. He very kindly agreed to do so. So I went to his office he's the dean, and so I went to his office to escort him to the lecture theater. Now, as we were walking along, because his poems are quite difficult to understand, I said to him, you don't mind, when you finish reading the poem, would you please interpret the poem? Well, he looked at me. It's good I was leaving. He looked at me with a very stern face. And he said, you never asked the poet to interpret his own poem. Well, I felt really quite embarrassed. But I really didn't understand why it's such a big deal. I now know why. Because what is a poem? Poem is what you read out of it. And if the poet tells you this is what the poem means, that's it. It can mean nothing else. It will always mean just what the poet meant it to mean. But if the poet never tells you what the poem means, then it will always be whatever you interpret it to be. So the poem will keep on meaning as long as it is being read. And what you read out of it will depend on you. What you will, what you want, what you think. That was the lesson I learned from this. I asked the poet, I asked Edwin, after I had analyzed, and this was after I had analyzed David. I asked him, I said to him, did I get the message? Did I get the meaning? You know what he said to me? Some of it. That was not really very strong, okay? Some of it. It's true. While the totality of the poet's message is unlikely to ever be fully captured by even the most careful and detailed analysis, nevertheless, this should not prevent us from trying to explore the processes by which the poet, as verbal artist, creates a highly textured, dramatically intricate work of art with multiple layers of meaning and metaphor. And here I quote T.S. Eliot. For us, there is only the trying. The rest is not our business. We try. We analyze. I'm analyzing. What I get out of it, well, that's what I get out. What have I gotten out of it now? I have a great appreciation for what goes into it. What Hassan talks about as a second order semiosis, I'll see that yes, that is created. It's not just a simple foreground thing, something more prominent than everything else. There's so much more that goes into it because it is an art. And the poet is crafting that work of art. And what's amazing is it's not paints on a canvas, it is words on a page. And that's what the poet is working. So what I hope you take away from this is an appreciation for the art. An appreciation also for how we can go about to analyze that art. And we can discover what is the meaning that is being made by the artist. It's 8 o'clock. I think we're due for a break. So let's take a break, please.
Clause analysis, we need to use this square method.
You know what I mean?
So.
Yes.
So should we combine using the small brackets and the square bracket?
The square brackets mean embedded, right?
Got it.
Embedded. The angle brackets just mean the clause, right? The tags that identify a clause number and so forth. When you use an embedded clause, and there can be more than one clause embedded in another, then we use the square brackets.
Then should we do this in our clause analysis?
If there is embedded clauses, then you should do that, yes.
So I just want to check, so this clause analysis, when you do this small brackets and the square brackets, is there anything else we need to do on the version of line?
But your clause analysis, basically that's it. Okay.
We just analyze the answer part, not the question part, right?
Sorry.
We just analyze the answer part.
Yes, just the answer, but
No question part.
don't
right?
need the question.
Can I ask to specify? I'm not asking for you to mark,
Yeah.
and asking about two specific.
Sure.
The first one, this one, should I put the angled brackets behind such as or in front of such as? I'm not sure because I didn't find similar sentences from the papers.
And I see it on terms of nature, most times people seek to avoid certain innate personality traits, such as, yeah, you put it right, such as,
Before.
yeah.
Okay, another.
But you go back, such as, what did you put?
such as determine.
Okay.
And then a clause here.
Okay, yes, okay.
Another one is about this one. It is hard to know the extent to which I'm not sure to put this square angled brackets before
the-
which or before.
Before the two, which,
Before two.
yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.